So I want to thank CJ Hartung for previewing the files that I'll be sharing in this, as well as spreading the word about this. So many of you may be here because CJ sent it to you. So thank you. So welcome. So my name is Noah McAllister. I am an aerospace engineering major at Rutgers University. But more importantly, for the topic of this webinar, I'm the lead editor at Preludium Music Engraving. So we do both commercial music preparation as well as more traditional classical engraving. So we're about to publish a previously unpublished set of works by the late German late romantic German composer Matilda Kralik. So I have the you can see it. I don't know if you can. Anyway, I have the draft of this here, and in terms of MuseScore, we recently did a set of about 60 pop lead sheets completely in MuseScore because our client wanted to be able to upload them to MuseScore.com and be able to share them that way. So before we dive right into how will we improve efficiency in MuseScore, I just want to talk about why would we use MuseScore. So possibly the least important reason for me is that MuseScore has a score sharing community. So for example, I have this image right here of the Passacaglia in C minor of Bach that someone wrote out into MuseScore and then uploaded. So if the score is open source, if the music in the score is open source, then you're able to download it for free. However, if it's not, you have to pay for a subscription to be able to download it. And you can decide if you want to do that or not. I personally don't do that. And so now my second point is that MuseScore always and forever will be free. And I know I just mentioned that MuseScore.com, you have to pay for a subscription if you want non-open source scores. But it's important to differentiate between the .com and the .org. So the .com, MuseScore.com is the score sharing platform, while the .org is the place where you can download the open source music notation software. And because of its open source license, MuseScore always and forever will be free. So this makes it great within education. For example, if you are teaching a class and you wanted them to write their music like a theory class, and you wanted to write their examples on a computer, instead of having to bring them down to the computer lab and then having to pay for the licenses, the educational licenses for whatever commercial program you have, you could actually have them install MuseScore on their Chromebook. And that's a much simpler way of doing it. So I actually have a link that I will paste in the chat that by Mark Sabatella that shows how you would go about using MuseScore on a Chromebook. And the final reason for me that I use MuseScore, and that you should as well, is that while it's free and it's open source, the notation quality is completely on par with other notation softwares if you know how to use it. So let me show you this in MuseScore. So right here, I have this piano vocal score that is the MuseScore default, and it doesn't look that good. If you gave this to a pianist, they would be quite upset with you because this is incredibly difficult to read. However, this is not to say that this is the only thing that MuseScore is capable of. So with the exact same music, you're able to create um, this type of layout. So this is a piano vocal that's loosely stylized on current uh, current practices on Broadway. Um, and you'll notice that it is on par with other notation softwares. Um, and then we can do more than just piano vocals. We could do a score that's laid out well and has the big time signatures I'll get to, because those are not as easy as one may think. Um, or you could even do a classic something classical. So here's the first page of Pierrot Lunaire, and here's the first page of the Saint-Saëns Clarinet Sonata, and the engraving, you'll notice, is comparable to that of the original punched engraved Durand edition. Um, so this is to show you that that MuseScore is capable of all of these things, and that to get to this point, what I'll be showing in the webinar is not very difficult. So first, if anyone has yet to download MuseScore, I will show you how to do that. So you would navigate to musescore.org, not .com, .org, and then you go to download software, and then you choose, you can ignore the thing, the release candidate. That's a beta version, so it's not completely stable yet. Down here, you can choose whichever one is suitable for your operating system. So I'll choose Windows 64-bit, and then it will download in an installer, and we'll see that in just a few seconds. Yeah, so the installer has downloaded, and what you would just do is just follow the steps in the installer, and it's very simple. You just like click through all of the next and agree to the open source license, and then you're good to use it. So I'm going to cancel this because I've already installed it. Yes. Gosh. And now we're going to look at what we will be looking at in the webinar. So in the first part, we'll be looking at keyboard shortcuts and how to use them to speed up note entry. In the second part, we'll be looking at creating templates and using style files, and I'll actually give the option to you guys of what type of template you want to see me make, and I can, there's lots of options. In the third part, I'll be talking about built-in tools, some external plugins, as well as macros. And if any of those concepts are foreign to you, don't worry, I'll be going over them when we get there. The last part will be a very quick demonstration of my workflow. So if you want to take parts of my workflow and incorporate them into yours, you're more than welcome to do that. And lastly, we'll have a Q&A. So if you have any questions about MuseScore, and in the latter, in part 3, I'll be showing a little bit of code. So if you want to look at how that code works and you want me to explain it in more depth, I would be more than happy to. And between each section, I'll have a short Q&A on relevant questions. So for each section, I have a takeaway that I want you to think about while we're going through that. And so my takeaway for the first section is the mouse will always be the slowest method of interacting with a program. So this is not just MuseScore. Let's say, for example, in PowerPoint that we wanted to make always bold. We could highlight it and then go to Home and then click Bold. Or, as I'm sure many of you are aware, we can just do Control B, or if you're on a Mac, Command B, and that will make it bold. And it's these little things of having to move our mouse up here and clicking on something that really slow down our process and um, inhibit our creativity, because we're no longer thinking about what we want to use the software to create. We're thinking about how would we do this within the software, and it interrupts our workflow. So let's look at how we would do this within MuseScore. Not bold per se, just uh, note entry. So if, let me pull up the chat, and I'm going to drop this file in. So in case anyone has didn't get my email, I will. Okay. So this. Is there anyone that didn't get it? Because the file sharing in the chat does not seem to be working. So if you didn't get it, I will email it to you now. Okay. One person says they've got it. Anyone who didn't before I get started? Okay. I will take that as everyone is good, and I will get started. So, for exercises, 1.1 to 1.3, we're going to look at the basics of note entry. So in MuseScore, there's different modes. So when we're just out and we're not entering music, it's just like the normal mode, as we see here. And but in order to enter music, yes, to answer your question, you will get the recording via email. So yeah, so to start note entry mode, we press N, or we can click down here, and this is the toggle for note entry mode. And what we do to enter music is we can either click on a duration, like for example, I want to copy this line in, so I've clicked quarter notes, and then I can click these in. But you'll notice that that is quite slow to do. So the first shortcut is that the durations can be specified with numbers, which is the same as finale. So 3 is a 16th note, 4 is an 8th note, 5 is a quarter, 6 is a half, 7 is a whole note. And we always specify the duration before we enter the notes. So for this, I click 5 for a quarter note, and then I can just type the letter names in. So I start on a C, and you'll notice that it's in the wrong octave. So the way we can fix that is we can use Control down, and if you're on a Mac, you can use Command down to bring it down to the next, bring it one octave lower. And then it's quite simple. We can just continue entering the notes. So D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and the same thing here. We've entered another C, but it needs to be down an octave. So we do Control down, Command down on Mac to bring it down an octave. And now we have eighth notes. So eighth notes can be, the shortcut for eighth notes is just 4. So we click 4, and now we're on eighth notes, and we can enter them. So, sorry. And then for a whole note, 7. And the first line is done. And that was quite simple. Now let's look at 16th notes. So these 16th notes, we're using, to specify them, we use 3. So you notice that I've switched to 16th notes, and your durations, this bar may be up at the top for you. I just prefer it down at the bottom, but it's the same thing. It just may be in different places on your screen. So we can enter this. So then F. This F is in the wrong octave, so we'll bring it up with Control or Command up. This G is in the wrong octave, we'll bring it down. And we want to repeat the same figure but up an octave, so we can just use Control up to bring it up. And now we're on dotted eighth notes. So dotted notes can simply be specified by using the period key. So we want to click 4 and then period to create a dotted eighth. So C, and we'll bring it up an octave. And then 16th note, you'll notice that the dot turns off. So whenever you specify a new duration, the dot will go away. So we'll add a B. And now there are two ways where you could enter this rest. One way is we can just skip over it and start entering there. Another way is that we can specify the duration we want, and then we can click 0 for a rest. So this is a quarter note rest, so we could click 5, 0. And now we're on beat 3. But let's suppose that we wanted to have this A on the and of 2. So we could create an eighth rest by doing 4, 0, and that will create the eighth rest. And now we're on the and of 2. But let's just stick to what's written, and we'll do it on beat 3. So entering the dotted note is the same. So 5 period A, 4 for an eighth note G, 6 for a half note D, B, 7 for a whole note C. And we're done this section, and that was pretty easy. Are there any questions about how I did this? Am I going too fast, too slow? Okay, I got a thumbs up. How do you enter rests with the mouse? So the way you would do that, so let's look at this example again. So I'll enter it, N for note entry, 4 period C, I'll bring it up an octave 3, and you could enter the rests by clicking 5 and then a rest, and then you could drag it in. I think this works. I don't use this way all that often, so it's similar to a toggle, this rest button. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. So let's continue. So here we have a slightly more complicated example. In your example, I'm fairly certain that there's a treble clef here, and we need to rectify that and change it to a bass clef. So what you can do is you can select the whole measure by just clicking on any element in the measure that's not like a note or a stem or a flag or whatever. And so we can click on like one of the staff lines, and we can go over here to the palettes, and we can click on clefs, and now we'll just add a bass clef in. So mine is already there, but if, for example, we wanted a treble clef, we could add it there, and then a bass clef. And the same thing here, because we want a treble clef, we would click the whole measure, click treble or bass or whatever may have you. How do we have a question. How do we enter a rest in the first beat of a measure? So it's the same way we would do it, enter any other rest. So we would enter, so let's say, for example, that this eighth note, we wanted to be an eighth rest. So we could do 4, 0, and now we're on the and of, and now we're on the and of 1. And now let's just continue with this. So we want 5. Actually, I can show you another way to do the rests, especially if there's a lot of things starting where you want a rest at the beginning of the measure. you can actually break up rests just by clicking or hitting the duration that you want. So if we wanted to break this up into 2/8 and 2/4 or 2/8 and a half, we could just click 4. And you'll notice that it will automatically break it up, and then we could start node entry on the second eighth. Either way works for you. I personally use 0. Does that answer your question? Okay, cool. So let's continue. We'll suppose that in this example, we just have a rest in the first beat. So uh, to do a quarter note, we'll use 5, and then we're in bass clef, so E, and then we want 16th notes. So 3 for a 16th note, F, E, D, C, B, C, and now an eighth note for this D, D, 5 for a quarter note, G, and now 3 for a 16th note, and now we have this chromatic note in A flat. The way you can enter it, if you were to do it the way using the mouse, is you could click a flat and then just click it in, and that's one way you could do it. I find the faster way to be if you click 3 for a 16th note, you enter an A, and then using the arrow keys for up and down, you can move the note chromatically up and down. So I've entered an A natural, and I want to bring it down a half step to an A flat. So I can just click down, and then I'm good. And then I can continue writing. So G, F, E, F, D, 4 for an eighth note, E, 5 for a quarter note, E, 3 for a 16th, F, E, flat. So same thing here. So what I did was I entered a 16th for the 16th, then an F, and then I entered an E, and then I brought it down to an E flat, using the down key, and that brings it down chromatically by 1. And then you can keep writing. So D, C, 4 for an eighth note, D, 5, G, and you'll notice that this G is in the wrong octave. We want to bring it down. So we use control down, command down on Mac, and we have 16th notes now. So 3, F. We want to make it sharp just by hitting the up key to raise by a semitone. G, A, B, C, E, and now quarter. So 5, 3 for a 16th, A, G, and now we have a G sharp. So G sharp, and we raise it up by 1 using the up key, F, D, B, 6 for a half note, D, 5 for a quarter note, C. And we're done with this. And that wasn't very difficult. We have I just created this random mess of notes to show you how you could enter more notes chromatically. Are there any questions about this so far? Okay, so let's do 1.3. So chromatic entry. So this one, it's not any more difficult than this one. We just have to remember to use the up and down keys. So I've clicked N to enter note entry, 3 for a 16th note. To switch between entering notes and rests. So a rest you can just think of as a type of like a pitch, really, is the way I think about it. So if I wanted to enter like C, D, and then I want to enter a 16th note rest, the rest is kind of like a null note, so I can enter it with 0. And then like F, for example. Does that make sense? So the length is just the same. Christopher asks, how do you know what the length the rest will be? So it's just the same as the duration that you were using before. So let's say here that I want to cut out this G sharp. So I'll do 3 for a 16th note down here, or up here if your toolbar is up here. So D sharp, I'll bring it. I will bring it down an octave. F sharp, and we want to cut out this G sharp. So it's a 16th note rest, so we can just hit 0, and now we're on the next note. If, for example, we wanted an 8th rest, we could hit 4 and then 0, and that would create the rest because we've told it what duration of the rest we needed. Okay, good. So we'll continue with this. So we're on 16th notes, and we just made the F sharp. Now we can make the G sharp. So G sharp, F. So you'll notice that we don't need to tell it that it's sharp again. It already knows. So like if you have an accidental throughout the measure, you don't have to keep respecifying that it's the accidental, which is quite helpful. Now, these 4 notes, this E sharp to F sharp, is slightly more complicated. So what I'm going to do is we're going to enter this as an F natural to F sharp, and I'll show you why once we're done with these 2 measures, and I'll show you how to change it back. Because the short explanation is that MuseScore will look at the key signature and decide that E sharp will probably never happen in the key of C major. So it doesn't allow you to move to an E sharp with the arrow keys. So I'm going to enter it as an F natural now, and we'll change it back later. So F natural, we have to bring it down because by default it was an F sharp, and then we can do F sharp, F natural, F sharp, and now the rest of the measure is slightly easier. So we can do A, bring it down to a flat, B is natural, D is flat, B is natural, this B is flat, A is natural, so we have to bring it up from an A flat, B is flat, so we have to bring it up to a natural, and C is natural. Now for here, we'll enter a C, and we'll bring it down an octave. I'll show you how to enter these courtesy accidentals right after. So this A, you'll notice that MuseScore will choose the interval that is the closest. So this distance of a third down was closer than a sixth up. So that's why it chose to bring the note down. And usually that's helpful. In this case, we do want the jump up of a sixth. So we'll bring this up an octave and raise it and bring it down, by a semitone. E is in the right octave. We'll make it flat. B is not in the right octave, so we'll bring it up, then we'll make it flat. F, we want to, F is natural, but we'll add this accidental later. C should be up an octave and sharp. A is already flat, and I'll show you how to enter the courtesy accidental. F should be up an octave and sharp. D should be down an octave, and it's already natural. So we'll come back to it. A should be up an octave and sharp. F is natural. C is natural. G is natural as well. D, we want up an octave, sharp. A, we want it to be an A natural, so it's currently at an A sharp, so we bring it down. G, we want to bring it up an octave and make it sharp. Okay, so let's come back to here where we entered F natural, F sharp, F natural, F sharp instead of E sharp, F sharp, E sharp, F sharp. So what we can do is we can select the F naturals, and then we can click the key J. And what this will do, and we can click it twice, and what this will do is it moves between all possible enharmonic spellings of that note. So I'll go back to what we had. So I've multiple selected these F naturals by holding down Control while I've selected them, or if you're on a Mac, you could hold down Command. So I've multiple selected them, and then I'm hitting J, and you'll notice that it goes to a G double flat. We don't want that. We do want it as an E sharp. And that's one tool that's very useful. The letter J will change the enharmonic spelling of the note that you've selected. And so we can, in the next section, I'll show how we can use this to our advantage. As for these accidentals that as of yet are not on the notes, what we have to do is we can multiple select them, and we'll go to our toolbar, yours may be up here again, and we'll just click the accidental that we want to add. And again, so for like this A flat that we want to be a parenthesized A flat, we'll click the A and we'll add a flat to it. Same for this F natural, we'll add a natural to it. I know I said that the mouse is the slowest way of doing things, and that still holds true. But I don't think by default the sharp, natural, and flat have keyboard shortcuts. So I'm showing you how to do it the mouse way, but in a later portion, I'll show you how to redefine your own keyboard shortcuts. So to add these courtesy accidentals, we can just use the parenthesis key. So I'm going to multiple select these with Control or Command. So I'm clicking on the accidentals, and now I can do on a US keyboard, it's Shift 9 for parentheses. I don't know if you're not in the US where a open parenthesis is, but it's the open parenthesis. So that's how we would use. That's how we would go about entering courtesy accidentals. Is there any questions about this? Am I going too fast, too slow, just right? Okay, cool. So let's move on to 1.4 through 1.6. So this deals with chords, tuplets, and ties. So let's first look at chords. So if you were to do it the mouse way of entering chords, we would click on the measure, click N, or click here, and we could do a half note, and then we could just like stack them up on top of each other for the C major chord. But again, that's pretty slow. So what we can do instead is we hit N to start note entry, 6 for a half note, and then we specify the bottom-most note of the chord. So here it's a middle C. So we actually need to bring the C down 2 octaves. So we'll do Control or Command down twice. And now, while holding Shift, this is both for Mac and PC, we can enter the other notes in rising up. So what I mean by that is for this C major chord in root position, we would do Shift E, Shift G, Shift C, and that will stack up the notes of the chord. And then it's the same procedure here for this like C sus4 chord. So we have a C, and we'll do Shift F, Shift G, Shift C, and that will stack up the notes. Accidentals are a little bit more complicated because you can't hold Shift while you're adding the accidental. So I'll show you this in this chord right here. So we want an E, so that we're just pressing E. Then we're going to do Shift G, and then I'm no longer holding Shift, and I click the up arrow key to move it up a half step. So if I were to hit Shift G and then up, you'll notice that it tries to select. It will select everything in the staff above it, and that's not what we want. So I am doing Shift G, no longer hitting Shift, hitting up, and then Shift B, Shift D. And what you'll notice about these two chords is that they're just transpositions of the same 7 chord. So what we can do is we can select them. So select them, copy them, and then transpose them. So there are multiple different ways to select within MuseScore. One is a lasso select. So while holding Shift, you just drag over the thing you want to select and then release, and it selects it. Another way you could do it is you click on one of the notes, and while holding Shift, you can use the arrow keys to select what you want. So I just want this one note, so I'm just going to select by doing Shift Left. So I'll copy it, and then I'll click here, and I'll paste it. So now we need to just move this chord down. So we'll just use the down key to move it down until it's the root is D flat. And you'll notice that the D flat, F, A flat are spelled correctly, but we want this beat to be spelled as a C flat. So we can use the shortcut J to change to the other enharmonic options. So by clicking J, by selecting the B and then clicking J, we'll change that B natural to a C flat, and that's how I want to spell it. So here on this B major chord, we'll just enter it the normal way. So we'll do B. Sorry, I should be on half notes. So 6 for half notes. So B, Shift D. I'm not holding Shift anymore. Up for a sharp. Shift F. I'm not holding sharp anymore. Up for a sharp. Shift B. Same thing with this open fifth chord. So G, Shift D. You'll notice that this D is sharp because the previous chord had a D sharp in it, so we want to bring it down to natural. So we move it down, and then Shift A and Shift E. For this, let's enter this F major chord just normally. So F, well, we have to bring it up an octave. So Control or Command up, then Shift A, C, F. And now I'm going to show you a third method for copying and pasting. So if we select a chord or any passage, really, we select something and then we want to duplicate it right next to it, we can just use the shortcut R. And this is the same in Sibelius if you've used Sibelius. Selecting something and then clicking R will duplicate it. And then we can just use the arrow keys to bring this up to G major. So we'll just use the arrow keys twice to bring it to G major. And you'll notice that I didn't enter every single chord manually. I noticed that, like, for example, these two chords are exactly the same. This one is just transposed. All of these major chords are the same, so I can just copy them and then move them up and down with the arrow keys. And these are like subtle things that, especially if you don't have a MIDI keyboard, will make your life faster. So So let's move on to tuplets, if there aren't any questions. Questions about chords or anything I've said so far? Okay, seeing none, I'll move on to tuplets. So, uh, one, uh, I'm going to show you two ways to do tuplets. Well, actually three. I will show you the bad, slow way of doing them, and then I'll show you two different ways that are pretty quick. So the bad, slow way of doing them would be to like break up the measure into its rests, and then we click here where the first rest is selected. We go to Add in the menu bar, Add Tuplets Triplet, and then we've created a triplet, and then we enter that. So C D E, and now we have to stop. Click it again, add tuplets, triplet, and then we keep going. This is quite slow, and there are much faster ways to do it. So if we wanted to create a whole measure worth of triplets or a whole section worth of triplets, let's say that you're just like transcribing the first movement of the Moonlight Sonata, and you have it's all triplets the entire time. You can just select the whole thing, and you just break it up. You break up the rests into the duration of the tuplet, the duration in which the tuplet is contained. So these eighth note triplets, three eighth note triplets make up one quarter note. So we break up the rest into quarter notes by clicking 5. We break up this half rest into quarter notes by doing 5, and then we can select the whole thing and do Control 3 or Command 3 on Mac. And now I've created tuplets for the whole measure, and I can go in and now enter them. So you'll notice that MuseScore automatically selects the duration that like would be standard in the tuplet. So an eighth note triplet, an eighth note is what it selects. If it's, for example, the 16th note septuplet, we'll select a 16th note. So we're already on eighth notes, and now we can just enter these notes. So, and that was pretty quick. Instead of having to go back and forth to add uh, add the tuplets, Christopher asks, how did I select the whole bar? That's a great question. The way I selected the whole bar, so if I want to just do this and select the whole bar, I'm clicking on a part of the bar that doesn't have any elements in it. So I'm not clicking on like a note head or like a tuplet or a beam or a stem. If you just click on one of the staff lines or in the spaces between the staff lines, it will select the whole measure. And it's very helpful to do because you'll notice that I use it a lot. I can just click and then delete it, or Control Z, Command Z to bring it back. So that's how to break up the bar. So the way I'll just go over that again. So I broke up. So I selected the bar, and to break it up into the quarter notes, I clicked 5, and so you'll notice that it breaks it up into 2 quarters and a half rest, and I'll just select the half rest and break that up into quarters just by hitting the duration of it. You could click, but I'm just using the keyboard because it's faster. Does that make sense? So then you would create all triplets by selecting the whole thing, Control 3 to add them. So I'll move on. I'll move on for now to this measure. So this is just we just want to enter a normal quarter note. We'll click 5 for quarter note, G, and now we have another tuplet. And this brings us to the second way we can go about entering tuplets, and that's within note entry mode itself. So the way we do this is we have the duration that we want the tuplet to take up. So this eighth note, this tuplet right here, this triplet, takes up the duration of uh, a quarter note. So I press 5 to make sure that a quarter note is selected, and then I can do Control and the number of the tuplet. So for this triplet, I'll do Control 3. If you're on a Mac, Command 3. And you'll notice that it breaks it up and automatically moves to the duration within the tuplet. So this here it would be eighth notes. But you'll notice here I want to have a quarter note at the beginning of the tuplet, and that's very doable. We can just click down here for a quarter note, or just hit 5, and now we can create a quarter note within the tuplet. So just F, 4 for an eighth note, D, 5 because we're now just on a normal quarter note, C. Again, I'll do that process again. So we just make sure to enter this tuplet, we make sure that we're on the duration that we want the tuplet to take up. So a quarter note, so 5. And then we do Control or Command and the number of the tuplet. So Control 3 here. And then we can enter them as normal. And you could even do nested tuplets, for example. If like you selected one and you want to break it up here and the beaming doesn't work well, but you could do that if you wanted. But here we'll just click 5 for this quarter note, enter a D, 4 for an F, and then if I do Control 7 here, I'll get a septuplet in the space of an eighth rest. If I want to do a septuplet in the space of a quarter note, which is what I want, I hit Control Z to undo it. And I'm going to make sure that I have 5 pressed for a quarter note so that the duration of the whole tuplet takes up is just we want to specify the duration the whole tuplet takes up. So I've clicked 5. Now I do Control 7, and you'll notice that it automatically moves to 16th notes because that's the base duration of the tuplet. So I can enter this G, F, E, D, C, and now we're just on normal quarter notes. So 5 for a quarter, F, G, and so we're on a quarter, which is the base duration of the septuplet. Control 7 to create the septuplet. We're on a 16th note, which is good. So F, E, D, C. Now, if you wanted to add rests within the tuplet, it's very easy to do that. So like I showed you earlier, the way we can break up rests is while we're just in normal mode, we can hit the duration. Same thing, if we want to combine rests, we can just click on them and then click the duration we want to combine it into. So, for example, if you were doing something with the septuplet swing and it was 4 septuplets and then 3 septuplets, and the first 4 you're playing and the last 3 you're not, you could do this by we've selected the first 16th note rest within the tuplet and we hit 4 period because dotted eighth will take up the same time as 3 16th notes. Or we could do the way it's spelled here with the 16th note and then an eighth note. So we select it to create the rest. And then for here, I'll go back to note entry mode. This is a quintuplet in the space of a half note. So I'll click 6 because we want the quintuplet to span a half note, and then I can do Control 5. We're already automatically on eighth notes, which is what we want. We can enter it, and then 6 for a regular half note, C. And what you'll notice here is that this is all 1 octave too low. So what I can do is I've selected the whole measure by just clicking on a part of it that's not an element. And using the same command we used before, Control or Command up, we can bring it up to the right octave. Okay. These tuplets and ties are probably the hardest things about node entry. So if I'm going too fast, you have a questions, feel free to ask. Um, so I will give you a fair word of warning about the ties. The way I'm about to show you to enter ties is not the way I enter ties, because I feel that it is too slow and unintuitive. And I'll show you maybe not a better way for you, but it works better for my workflow. But the way you normally enter ties is so we first want to create this rest on the beginning of the beat. So we hit N for 0 for an eighth note rest at the beginning. And then what we can do is we can click 5 for a quarter note because we want F. That's all good. And now we need an eighth note. So we click 4, E flat. And now the shortcut to tie is Shift equals, or the plus key. So we'll do plus to tie it to itself. So the way you'll notice, like, the paradigm of default node entry mode in MuseScore is we always specify the duration before the pitch. So for here, I didn't have to specify that the thing I'm tying to this E flat was an eighth note, because we're already on eighth notes. But here, for example, I will. So again, I'm just hitting Control. Shift equals, or the plus key, to create the tie, and then I can move back to a quarter note and do F. Wrong octave. We'll bring it down. And the great thing about MuseScore is that it has it's intelligent about ties, about notes over bar lines. So we have this 2/8 tied together. So 2/8 is just one quarter note. So instead of having to write 4G tie, which you could do, you can just hit 5G and it will automatically break it up into ties. And that's very useful because you don't get an annoying dialog box like you do in Finale that tells you you have too many notes in the measure. Like, when will you ever when do you ever want too many notes in the measure? So and then what you notice is we don't have to switch back to a quarter because we were already on it. So 5, so F, we have to bring it up an octave. 4 for an eighth, so E flat, and then the plus key to tie it to an eighth note. 5 for a quarter note, F, down an octave, 4 G. And here, what we have to do is we have to specify 6 for a half note because it's the note we want to tie this eighth note to. So we can't just leave it at this G and just hit plus, because it will tie it to an eighth note, which is not what we want. We want to tie it to a half note. So we'll hit 6 and then plus, and it ties it. And then it's the same thing here. So 5, F, up an octave. We could do this two ways. We could do it by doing quarter tied to an eighth, or we could do dotted quarter, because an quarter tied to an eighth is the same space as a dotted quarter. So that's what I'll do here. So I'll do 5 dot, E flat, and you'll notice that it breaks it up over the bar line, which is what we want. And I'll just do 5 to respecify a quarter note without a dot. So F, down an octave, 4 for a G, Shift equals or plus, and then 5 F. We have to bring it up an octave. And so that's how we enter ties, and it's quite slow. In I believe 3.2, I'll show you how to do it much faster. Any questions about ties or anything? Anything before? Okay, cool. So, how did you get the G in measure 2 and 3? Um, oh, so here, the way I did this let me just delete this. So I was on this last eighth note of the beat. I clicked 4 for an eighth note, G, and then I want to tie it to a half note. So I hit sixth for a half note, and then I can hit plus to tie it to it. Um, does that make sense? Okay, yeah. So does this also work when doing chords? Yes, except doing the notes over bars. So, for example, if I wanted here, I'll do and if you're doing it on a MIDI keyboard, it's unstable. So I've entered this from my keyboard. It only creates it if you're doing it over bars. It will only create it on the second part. So uh, it doesn't work in that regards. But um, if you were typing them on a keyboard, yes, it would. And if you ever have this instance, just don't write it as just don't write it using a chord. Um, just write them out manually. So C, E, G, and then we want to tie that, and that's faster than having to do than having to fix what it doesn't understand with the MIDI. So yeah, it works for chords. So I'll move on to 1.7 and 1.8, and then we're almost done with section 1. So um, uh, music is quite boring if we don't have articulations and dynamics. So I'll show you how to enter them. So these are shortcuts that like you definitely should memorize. The durations and articulations are ones that are like your go-to shortcuts that you should keep in your brain because of how fast it makes life. So if what I want to do is we want to copy all of the articulations from this strangely articulated passage up here into the bottom stave. Uh, so the way we could do this is we could go to the palette and we could click on articulations, and then we could click on an accent, and we could click on this note, then a tenuto, and then we would select these two notes, go to lines, hit slur, and then it creates it. But that's super, super slow. So to add a staccato is Shift S, marcado, the O is Shift O, in accent is Shift V. Um, because I guess the accent kind of looks like V. Tenuto is Shift N for some reason, and a slur is S. So it with these it becomes very easy to enter these articulations. So we have an accent, so Shift V. I move to the next note, Shift N, and for the slurs, what I see some people do is they'll click S to do a slur, which is great, but then they'll click S and then they'll drag. This takes so long. Don't do that. And like the positioning could be weird. So like you could put it here and now the slur isn't connected to anything. So don't do slurs with drags. What you want to do is you want to select the thing that you want to be under the slur. So I've selected the first one, selected the last one while holding Shift. Then I can click S, and it will automatically put it in the right position. And then we can continue. So Shift S, Shift N for tenuto. We want to add a slur to these two, so we'll select them, S. We want to add a slur to these four, so we'll shift, while holding Shift, we'll move over to the last one, S. On this D, we want to add a staccato, so Shift S. On this E, an accent, tenuto, so Shift N. And what we can do, we can add multiple articulations at the same time by selecting. So we can select these two notes and then do Shift S, and it adds multiple staccatos at the same time. Same here. We can Shift select them or select them in any method you want to do. And then we can do Shift O to add these marcatos. So Shift S, we can add multiple articulations at the same time. It doesn't matter what order we do them. They will stack in the correct order. So we can do Shift V, Shift N, or we could do NV. It doesn't matter. It will stack correctly either way. The slurs here are the same thing, so I'm just selecting it. We want to add a staccato here, so Shift S. So I've selected these, Shift S. We want to add a slur here, and then a tenuto with a marcato, so Shift NO or ON, doesn't matter. We'll add a slur here, another slur here, marcatos, an accent with a tenuto, so VNS. And it's really quite fast to do it that way. And I remember when I was in, I think, ninth grade, I played a musical where there was an E flat clarinet part, and I didn't have one, so I had to play it on regular clarinet on B flat, and I wrote out the E flat part, then transposed it in MuseScore, um, and then I didn't know how to add articulations, so I was dragging them into the score like this, and it's so hard to get the positioning correct. Um, don't do that. Just I got so frustrated, in fact, that I just printed it out without any articulations and just wrote them in myself because I was fed up of having to drag them in because I didn't know about the shortcuts. Um, and like I was talking while I was doing it, so um, I was doing it pretty slow, but you can get pretty fast while doing this, like this, and it's quite quick to enter them once you memorize these shortcuts. So now let's look at dynamics. So dynamics are one thing in MuseScore that don't have a keyboard shortcut to them. And so you've noticed that I've really only discussed this toolbar. Again, it may be at the top for you, but I haven't discussed the palette or inspector. So the way when I was thinking about designing this webinar, I did it with these things in mind because MuseScore's interface can look cluttered to people who are not used to it. But what I'm showing you is that you don't need the palette and inspector for the majority of things. Dynamics are not one of them, unfortunately. So the palette is just like an artist palette. They have all of the paint colors that they need, and they can use that to add the paint to their canvas. Same thing here. Anything that we would want to add to the score is in the palette. So I can open the dynamics palette, and then I can select this note to add a mezzo forte, and I click mezzo forte, and it adds it. I can click this note for a mezzo forte. Sorry, I said mezzo forte when I meant mezzo piano. Same thing here, pianissimo, forte, mezzo piano, and this sforzando. We have. I don't think it's in there by default. So if it's not in there for you, you click more, and you have a lot more dynamics that you want to use. So let's say, for example, I wanted this RFZ in there. So I can just drag it in, and then I can click on the note in the score, hit RFZ, and then we're good. Hairpins, luckily, do have a shortcut. So they're similar to slurs, where we select everything that we want to be in under the like on top of the hairpin, and then we can do less than and greater than signs to add them to it. So here I would do crescendo, decrescendo. I'm going to select this using Shift, crescendo, select these, decrescendo, and now we're done. And what you've noticed is that we don't get it's not like finale, least, because I also use Finale, where they don't align, and you get hairpins that kind of look like this, and you have to run a plugin to fix them. That's very frustrating. MuseScore does this by default. I didn't change any of the settings for these dynamics. Um, it does this automatically, and you can actually do this with um, uh, with multiple things. So if we wanted to add a mezzo piano here, we could select the whole thing and add mezzo piano, and it would work, and um, it automatically moves the hairpin. Same thing here. Could add one, moves the hairpin. So it's great if you have a full score and you just select like this big line that you vertically that you want to be under one dynamic, and then you can add that. Um, yeah, so that just about wraps up section one. Are there any questions about anything I've done in section one? Okay, so for section two, we're going to be talking about templates and style files. So I'll first give um, my spiel about the takeaway for it, and then I'll actually turn it over to you guys. Is there any specific template that you want to see me create? And you could think about your answer now or put it in the chat. So my takeaway is if you write consistent music, use a template. And consistent, I just mean for the same or similar ensemble, same or similar genre, etc. So if you have you're a band director and like your band is probably not changing um, between at least per semester probably, you can just create a template for your band that semester, and anything you arrange you can just copy that template and use that, and all of the formatting choices that you've made in advance are copied there. um, so that's why we would use it. And um, yeah, so I use templates all the time because it's very tiring. I'll show you, to have to go in and change these settings every single time if you want to do it. So is there a specific type of template you want to see me create? I know I could do any of these really. So, or something like um, something like a flex ensemble. Um, so something like this. Anyone could answer, or I could just pick. Could I do a big band one? Sure. Um, any other things that you want to say? Okay. Tristan, I'll get back to you with the big band one. I'll do flex ensemble, um, because it's slightly more complicated um, to create. So I'm gonna close out of these things that I have open. Piano quintet. I'll do that after flex because flex will be by far the most complicated. So um, we're gonna go to file, new. Um, we're just for the title, we'll just put like song title. Composer, we'll just put composer. Next, choose instruments. Okay, so this is the part where you have to decide what you want. So the one I set up, I'm not a band director, so I don't know how you would do it, but the way I would do it is like in four voices, and there's multiple different transpositions for each voice. So for sopranos, I would do a C and a B flat instrument. For altos, I would probably do a C, a B flat, and an E flat instrument. So I'm just choosing instruments that are of the right transposition. For tenor, you probably want a C. I'll do this with bassoon. I'll a C, B flat. I'll do with tenor, E flat. I'll add an E flat anyway, and we want an F for horn, and then for bass, we'll choose C, B flat, and E flat, and maybe we just want to add a single percussion stave. So I'll just add a drum set because that will have the 5-line percussion stave. We'll go to next. C major is fine for now, or if you're a band director and you prefer flat keys, and you could choose B flat. Time signature, I'll just leave it at 4/4 for now. 32 measures will be good. We can change it later. So you notice that this does not look good. So the first thing we have to do is we have to fix the bracketing and the names. So the bracketing, the way you can do that is you have to go down here to where this drop-down menu is. And so I'm going to click on the thing that says AHK Workspace V3. You're going to click on the one that says Advanced. And what you can do is we want to select brackets. Brackets is right here. So we select brackets, and then we select the staves we want within the bracket, and then we click bracket. Same thing for these altos. Bracket, the tenors, bracket, baritones, bracket. And so in MuseScore 3.6, the joining the bar lines will be automatic, but I won't show you. The way you would do it is you just select all of the bar lines in the same stave. So you do right click on a bar line, go to select all similar elements in the same stave. And in the inspector, you check and uncheck this depending on how you want it, and that will bring the bar lines to the next step. For now, I'm not going to do that because once you add music to it, it will break them up and it gets very confusing to look at. So I'll just leave it at this for now. So I think part of the reason that MuseScore doesn't look that great by default is its choice of font. So it uses the open source font called Emmentaler, which is the default of Lily Pond. So we can fix that and choose Bravura, which is what Dorico uses, by going to Format Style. And we have this box, and we can go to Score, and we're going to choose Bravura and hit OK, and it automatically looks a lot better. Now, what we can do is we'll fix the titling. I'll get back to changing the instrument names in a second because that will I'll do it for like 1 or 2, and then I'll move on to the other templates because it will take quite a bit to do. Which is to say, this is the reason why you don't do this every single time, and you create a template so you can do one and be done with it. So the way MuseScore handles headers is it has a header right here, and this is called a vertical frame in the inspector. And let me just mention what the inspector does. The inspector allows you, if you select any element in your score, you can change the properties about it. So if you selected on a font thing, you could change the if you selected on a text element, you could change the font and things about that. So here I did. So I first changed the height of this to 13 spaces just to make it a little wider. And I'm going to change this to Century Schoolbook. And I'm going to hit center. So this is the vertically center section. So this is center on top, vertically center, center on bottom. So I'm going to choose vertically center. And this is the horizontal center. So I'm horizontally centering it, and maybe I'll bring the font size down to like 20 or maybe 22. And so you'll notice when I've selected on this, some of the things are blue and some are white. This can be confusing for people, but it's really a good system once you understand how it works. So the things that are blue are encoded within the style of the document that you've set up. So when we went to format style, whatever is in here is what we've told the style to be for that element. So this element is a title in a frame text. So the way we can change that from the inspector, instead of having to go into the style dialog box and go through and find title and change all of these, we can make it the style by hitting this S. And for all of the things that we've changed, now if we add another title, it will be the exact same font and everything that and positioning that we chose, and that's what we want, because when we create the parts, it will be where we want it. You can do the same thing for composer. So I'll click I'll write Century Schoolbook. 12-point font looks good. So now we'll come back to these names. So this is by far the most arduous part of doing the flex ensemble, is that creating the names. So the way I did it here, MuseScore doesn't have a way to center like things within a bracket. So these are I'll show you how you create the staff names. You right click on the staff and go to staff properties. And you've noticed that I've had to enter this as enter C, enter, and then part 1, and I'm wrapping this in bold. So this is the command to do bold, and I'm putting spaces after it so it shifts it to the left. You don't have to do this. It takes a lot of time to play with if you want to do that. Another way you could do it is if you do to staff part properties. So we probably don't want this name to be flute 1. We want it to be part 1 in B flat, in C, excuse me. So we'll write that in the part. So the part name right here is the name that will be generated when we create parts. The long instrument name is the name right here, and the short name is the abbreviated name on a page of the score that is not the first page. So we'll change this to soprano in C, or part 1 in C. We'll change this to part 1 in C. I'll just do 1 in C, or I'll stick with Roman numerals. Apply, and you'll notice that it changes it. So I'm going to copy this because we'll be using it a lot, and we now go to the part in B flat. So we want this to be, we have to copy, we'll first paste this in what we want, and we'll get rid of the clarinet part, but we want to keep the B flat part. So we'll cut and paste that in so that we have part 1 in B flat. We'll copy this and change this so it's just 1 in B flat. Click apply, it creates it. I don't remember it. Mr. CJ Hartug asks, is there a shortcut to do the accidental? It might be. Not in here. If you were in another text box, there's something down here that I'll show you later where we can add other symbols, and that's where we would do it. But to create the flat, it's easiest just to copy and paste it. unfortunately. So we click apply, that's good. Now let's move. I'm not going to do this for everything because you see how it goes. So part two in C, C, part two in C, two in C. Same thing here. Get rid of this part. Part two in B flat. Copy this, paste it, paste it, and I'll show you more of the other layout things before. Oh, Steven says we don't have to go through the piano quintet example. Okay, that's cool. If you do want to see it, just let me know. I'd be more than happy to do it. So let's look at changing this font because it's the font that it uses is not that great. So now we have to go into the style dialog box. So I have a shortcut to do that, but you'll have to click format style. So we go all the way down to text styles, and we want to click on instrument name long. So in the template I showed you, I did it as Gil Sans. So I'm going to change all of these to Gil Sans, including the part, and I'll come back to the part later because there will be other we want to change this to 14. I know. You'll have to decide these numbers for yourself. This is just what I do. So I'll click OK, and this looks better. We want to have the measure numbers over every single bar in the score so you can find it more easily. So the way we can go that is format style. To open the dialog box, we go to measure numbers on the side, interval, and we decrease this to 1. And we want you can decide if you want to show first or not. I will. So, and now we have measure numbers over every bar in the score. Here's where we can use the inspector to change them. So we can click on a text, and maybe we want it as Arial. Gil. I'll just do Gil Sans again, and we'll change this to like 12 point. And we don't want it to follow the staff size. So when we make these smaller to fit on this page, it will work. So we're going to click S to make it a style, and you see that now they're all updated. This one is a little close to the score, so I can change the positioning here. So I'm going to decrease this positioning from the staff in the Y direction, and then just hit S, and it moves them all up. Just now let's look at setting up the page. So this page is not this page should be with the title, but it's not. So what we can do is if we go to Format Page Settings, I'm in the US, so any music teachers in the US would probably use letter. If you're in Europe, A4 or whatever paper you print on by default. And we probably want to change the staff space to something smaller. So let's try 1.4 millimeters or 1.5 millimeters. And you see that fits on the page now. So, but I'm going to switch the unit to inches because I'm more comfortable with that. So these page margins are very strange, at least for printing in the US. And so a lot of teachers will have their music in binders so that they can just print it double-sided and flip through them. So you want the odd numbered pages to have a little bit more space on the right and the left to have a little bit more space on the left. So we'll fix that now. I think it's best to do margins of 1/2 inch at least. And you'll notice in this preview it will update. So I've gotten rid of the side margin, and I want this to be a little bit bigger. So I'll do maybe like 0.75 inches and do 3/4 of an inch. So there's space for the hole punching. Same thing here. I'll just change this to 0.5 inches, and then I'll do this for the even numbered pages. I'll copy this, paste it, apply, and now you notice that it looks much better. So about the spacing in between these, so you notice that the spacing in between them is not all that great, because we probably want a little bit more space between the part 2 and part 1. What we can do to do that is we can go into the space where we want more space above it. We can right click staff part properties. And now what we can do is we can increase the distance above the stave. And maybe we'll do like 3 spaces. And what you'll notice is it increases space above the stave in, this will be, anytime we have this part 2, there will be 3 more spaces than normal. So I'll hit OK. I'll do the same here, staff part properties. I'll change this to 3 spaces. Apply, OK. Right click, change this to 3. And finally, do it for the percussion. So 3 spaces. And now you notice that it's spaced out much better. And what you probably want is, depending on your music, it's probably best to have 4 bars per system. And if you don't know, a system is just like a paragraph of music. So what we can do is we can actually use a tool for that. So we do Control A to select all of the music, and we go to Format, Add Remove System Breaks. So we can add a system break every 4 measures. And what you'll notice now is that it spaces it every 4 measures. And this is exactly what we want. And that's great. I'll just call this Flex Webinar. I don't want to take too much more time with this, so I'll just go over creating parts for it. So the what's great about MuseScore is that the parts will update automatically. So we can go to File, File Parts, and what we can do is say we want to generate all parts, and then hit OK. And then up here, we can see all of the parts that were generated. And that's great. The only one thing we want is maybe we want this to be a little bit bigger, and we want a box around it. So we can fix that. So the parts in MuseScore have, they're not all the way linked. There are bugs with the linking between them to change the style. So it's buggy to do it within the inspector. So I'm going to do it within the style, format style, because it will just be less prone to error. So I go to format style, go to text styles, insert name part. And so I want to create a frame around this. So you'll see that it creates the frame. I don't want a quarter radius. Maybe I want this a bit thicker. And I want a little bit more space, so 0.7. That looks pretty good. You'll notice that it's no longer in the corner, and we have to adjust the frame to the corner, so we can just use the offset. So I'm just moving the X and Y until it's in the corner like I want. And what I do now is I hit apply to all parts. And what it does is now, if we go into any other part, these will all, the part names that we generated in right click score staff properties will be having, will have a consistent font. And so what you'll notice now is I broke up all of these multi-measure rests just by hitting M. You probably don't want this such big measure numbers over every bar in the parts. So again, we can fix that by going to format style. We can go to measure numbers, and we can just check every system. And now they'll just appear every system, and we can hit apply to all parts. And now we can change the make them a little bit smaller. So we could go to style text styles, choose measure number here, and we'll just decrease this to maybe like 8 point. And we hit apply to all parts. Okay. And now we notice that all of the parts have are laid out, have the measure numbers that are correct. So what you want to do now is, let's say we've gone through you've put in some music, you see how you like it, and you adjusted some things. Maybe you want to change the font of some text and things. So you're all good with your template. What you can do now is you can go to format, save style, and you can load this as a style that you want. So I'll just call this webinar flex score. And the reason that we do it as a score is important. So I've saved it from the score, and now I go to a part. I probably want multi-measure rest to be automatically created, so I hit M, and now I save it, go to format, save style, and I'll do webinar flex part and save it. And now, if I were to take away all of the style, so if I did format reset style, this is what it would look like by default. But now we can load in a style file, and it will fix all of this. So we go to format, load style, and we go to webinar flex part, and we load it. And now it's exactly as we wanted it, and all of the settings that we saved are now there, which is great. So Tristan asked for a big band one, so I'll when you update the score, will each part auto update with those notes? Yeah, so let me just copy and paste some music in that I have. So let's say I added this, I have this section, and I'm copying it in here. So there's it's not exactly appropriate music for a soprano line, but what you'll notice is that it automatically updates and it breaks the multi-measure rests, which is great. So I'll look at a big band. So I think MuseScore has a big band built in. So if we go to I just hit next, and then we go, instead of choosing the instruments, I go to jazz. I click big band, and then you go next. We'll do it in C, finish. It creates a big band with all of the instruments that you would want in one, and the font that it chooses is not my favorite. It's called Muse Jazz Text. I would probably change this to some sans serif font, but you can decide what you want. Let's just say that you wanted to change this to be a lot of big band music is on landscape pages. So if you wanted to change that, you could go to format, page settings, and then just choose landscape here, hit apply, and you would just have to go around and adjust the spacing of things for it to change, but until to get it on the first page. But that's how you would do it. I believe there's actually also a piano quintet big band preset in. So if we go to File, New, song title, next, chamber music, there's not a piano quintet. But what we can do is we can go to a string quartet, hit next, finish. This is good enough. We'll change this. Sometimes bravura may you may want to do bravura. It looks great. What you could also do is Gonville, which is another font. This is the font I used in the Sanson thing that I showed before, and it's just a different style if you want to do that. And the way you would add a piano to this is you click I for instruments, and you go to keyboards, piano, add. Then you click OK, and it will add a piano to it. And we'll have to add. I don't know why it doesn't. We don't need to see that this is a piano. It's pretty self-explanatory. In order to bring these bar lines down, again, we'll just right click on a bar line, select all similar elements in same staff, and then we'll check and uncheck span to next staff in the inspector. So now it's laid out appropriately. You could add system breaks every 4, depending on what you wanted, and there it is laid out. I'll just look at headers really quick. If you wanted to add a header to your piece, you would go into format style and you go into header. And so we're going to usually a page number we want to be in the header and not the footer. So this looks. You should also be able to double click a single bar and drag it to the next stave downward to have them extend. Yeah, you could do that as well. Either way works. So what this has, it has a bunch of what you see here are whenever you put a $ and then something, it will tell you what it will add. So like $ lowercase p will be the page number except on the first page. So we want to have this on the left side of even parts and the right side of odd parts. And so we'll delete it here. And then in the middle, maybe we want, so we can see that the song title will have to do, we'll notice that this is very not pleasant to look at. We'll have to do $ work title colon. So we'll do $ work title colon, and we'll copy and paste this into both. And we hit OK, and we notice that the song title, which I changed up here, is now the title, which is what we want. And we can change what this is. Unfortunately, you can't click here and do like title, and it won't change here. The way you have to change it here is you have to go into File, Score Properties, and then you have to go down to Work Title, and then you change it here. And you click Save, OK, and now it's updated. But you can get some pretty complex. I'm just going to delete this. You can get some pretty complex header stuff. So here in the piano vocal, what I've done is I've increased the font size using this HTML tag for just the middle page number. And for here, I want the show title to be italicized, and then but not the number or the work title. So you can do some pretty complex things with them. And so that pretty much wraps up section 2. Any questions about it? I can, and if you want to see like any other aspects of templates, I could do it at the end. So let's look at the takeaway for section 3. So it is automate whenever possible. And the reason we do this is because just like using shortcuts, automation will save us mental energy of having to do repetitive tasks over and over again that a computer is really good at doing. So I will open up uh, section, and then we're going to move to section 3. And so 3.1 isn't an automation per se, but it's definitely a faster way to do it. So instead of having to specify the duration and then specify the pitch, duration, pitch, what we can do is we can specify all of the durations and then all of the pitches. So the way we would do that is we go down here to the N and we check rhythm. And now what you can do in rhythm entry mode is you can click 6 8 times for 8 half notes, and then you can go back to the beginning and repitch them. So this is just, it will preserve the rhythm that's already written, and you can just write new notes on top of it. So I'll do C and then C. For these, I'm just gonna finish them with my MIDI keyboard. So it didn't like that. So I have to make sure that I'm on that note. So there we go. D flat 7. We'll have to spell that again. B major, F major, G major. So we can respell these with J, excuse me. So D flat, A flat, C flat, B, we want that as a D sharp. And now we're good. We'll just bring this down an octave. And that's much faster than having to, especially if you have a MIDI keyboard. That example is probably not the best one to do for doing using duration and then pitch as two different input modes. But this one is the use of regroup rhythms. So the way, so what you can do here is you can you can add the rhythm for this and then do the pitch. So I've assigned this to the shortcut of Control-Shift-I. You can do whatever you want, but how would we assign new shortcuts? So you go to Edit, Preferences, and then you go to Shortcuts up here, and then for here, I'll just type in Rhythm and Note Input. You've noticed that I've assigned it to Control-Shift-I. If I wanted to do it as something else, I could do it as like Control-Shift-Alt-. And then you would just hit Add if you wanted to add a new one. For pitch, we would go click on this one and we could define a new one or clear it out if there's something there that we want to clear out. So yeah, that's how you would reassign a shortcut. So I've assigned to regroup rhythms as not regroup rhythms, rhythm entry mode as Control-Shift-I. And now what you can do is when we're doing rests in rhythm mode, you have the rests are toggles. So we turn the rest on, we specify the duration, turn the rest off. So we do 0 for 0 for that eighth note rest, and then we can just hit 5. Because what you'll notice is I'm going to be able to like spell these rhythms correctly afterwards. So now I'll go back and tie them with plus, tie the things that were not yet tied. And I can go back to the beginning, select all of it, and do Tools, Regroup Rhythms. And now all of these things have been spelled in the rhythmically correct way. And this is so much faster than having, this is how and if I'm needing to enter ties, this is how I do it because it's really quick. And now I'll just go into repitch mode and enter the, I'll just do this with my keyboard. So F, F. And we're already done. That was a lot faster than if you had to use, if you had to like specify 4, and then you were tying it to a half note, so you did 6 and then plus. It's just a faster way to do it. You can decide if that works for you. It may not work for people who are composing things, and if you're composing something and you're just thinking through it, if you don't already know what the rhythm may be, it may not be helpful, but it works for my workflow and what I do. So let's look at 3.3. So this is select all similar elements. So what select all similar elements is we can select anything of like the same type. So like articulation, line, note, kind of, text element. We can select this, and what we can do is if we want to copy these articulations down to this bottom staff here, is we can right click on one of the articulations, go to select all similar elements in range selection, we can copy it, and then we can just click the first note of the selection we want to add it to and hit paste, and all of these articulations are now in there. You'll notice that it doesn't work for slurs because lines are treated slightly different. Lines are treated slightly differently, and they can't be copied and pasted as easily. So like I could try to do it. So I've selected the whole thing. I right click on a slur, select, copy same elements in range selection. I copy them. I go to the first one, and I've hit paste and it doesn't work. So even if I click here, hit paste, it doesn't work. So the slurs you'll have to enter in manually, but that doesn't take all that long to do. So it's not that difficult. So this is especially useful if you have a passage where you're writing something and you want a uniform articulation throughout like everything. What you can just do is you can copy their articulations for one and just paste them into the other staves, and that's really helpful. And you can do them for dynamics too. So let's say I got rid of all of the dynamics here. So I could right click, select all similar elements in range selection, copy, paste, and now it's added them back in the right spot, which is what we want, which is great. So, and then 3.4 and 3.5 are the things probably that are one of the tools that I use the most, and that's Implode and Explode. So Implode, what it will do is if you take a selection and you run Implode, it will force it into one stave. So you click the selection, and then you go to Tools, Implode. You can set shortcuts for those select similar options. Yeah, it in my experience, I've tried to do that. It's not as it doesn't always work as well as at least for me, it doesn't work as well as the thing I'm about to show you, which is a macro that does it. But if it works for you, great. It doesn't work on my setup. So to implode something, so to bring the selection into one staff, we can go to Tools, Implode, and it creates it in two different voices. So you'll notice that these are all of the same rhythm. So we could just put this as just chords, and the way we would do that is we run the implode command again. So we do Tools, Implode, and it just writes it as chords, and that's really helpful. So like if you're writing if you're like a choir director and you've made an SATB arrangement and you want to create an accompaniment piano part, you can just select the soprano and alto lines, paste it in the piano, and then implode it into one stave so that your part is already there. You don't have to like try to rewrite the part because that just takes a lot of time. So for Explode, it's the same thing, just in reverse. So if we make a selection, we make a selection, we do Tools, Explode, it will explode them onto two different staves. And if we had 3-note chords, it would explode them onto 3 staves. 4, same, it would do it onto 4 staves. So just really quick, I have to go for 2 minutes, but I will soon be back. So I'm just gonna mute myself and pause the recording. So okay, so I'm back now. Oh, that's great to hear that you're learning so many things. Okay, so does anyone have any questions on using these like built-in tools before we move on to plugins? What if you have a 3-note chord but only in 2 staves? I'm not exactly sure. I'll try that out. So if we are to add, add a fifth above and explode it, it deletes the bottom one. So it's probably best if you have like a dummy stave underneath it if you have 3 notes, because it will, the third note in the group, the bottom most note, it will just delete. And if you try to, like, say this was a half note, and I'm gonna do something really quick that I'll show you how I did that just now. And a little bit later, it's in fact the next plugin that we'll get to. But if it's the same, if it's different rhythms, so like here it's a different rhythm, we tried to implode it. We could implode these staves, but it wouldn't allow us to collapse this into a chord because those are 2 different rhythms. Yeah, so let's look at these 2 plugins. So if you're new, if you don't know what a plugin is just an external piece, like an external tool that someone has written that you can add onto a program to extend the functionality of the program. So we'll be looking at 2 today. So one of them is called Prune Stack. And I'll show you how to download this because it's not as easy as just downloading MuseScore. So I'll go here, and here's the link for it. I'll paste it in the chat. The way you would get to it is you go to Download Plugins, and you scroll down to Prune Stack. And you go here, and you click on this top button that says Download Prune Stack on GitHub. It should download a zip folder for you that you'll open, and then you want to click on it, and we can extract it. So I'll just extract it to downloads for now. So now it's been extracted, and so you can read the README if you want. You don't want to choose the 2x unless you're using version 2, but I don't. Hopefully, none of you are. You'll want to copy, take the. We'll want to. So we're going to take this and we're going to add it to our plugins folder. So this will go. So we need to navigate to. I believe it's the same for on Mac too. You go to Documents, MuseScore, Plugins, and then you drag this prune stack 3x.qml into this folder, and now you'll be able to use it. So I'm not going to do that because I already did that. You may have to restart MuseScore. I don't think so though. But if yeah, if you might have to if you're not able to see it here. Um, so the way you add it to this menu is you go to Plugins, Plugin Manager, and then you have this whole list. These are all of the plugins that you have in that folder. So the one called Prune Stack, you click the checkbox and you just click OK, and you click, and then you go back to the plugins, and there will already be its option in the menu. Does anyone need me to go over the installation of it again? Okay. So the way Prune Stack works is that we can select a. I'm gonna duplicate. I'm just gonna copy this line into this bottom line. And let's say we wanted to create horn 1 and 3 and horn 2 and 4 parts. So you already have this chord, and one way you could do this is you could these 4-voice chords. So you put it into a stave and you explode it out, and then you take one of them and then you switch the order around so that they're flipped, and then you can implode them back together. That's one way to do it, but a better way would be to use this plugin. So what it does is if you make a selection, you go to Plugins, Prune Stack, what it can do is it you can cut out specific levels of the chord. So it counts the levels from the bottom to the top. So the bottom note of the chord is 1, second to bottom is 2, etc. So if we're creating a horn 1 and 3 and 2 and 4, we want just the top and the third to top. So we want to cut out the bottom levels 1 and 3. So it's a little counterintuitive, just because of the naming conventions. But we want to cut out levels 1 and 3. And you can click Prune Stack, and it will do that. It will cut out all of those notes that you don't want. And you can do the same here. You can go to Plugins, Prune Stack, and you can click 2 and 4 to cut out the second to bottom layer and the top layer to create the 2 and 4 horn 2 and 4 line. And that will do it. And it's very, I use this so much, in fact, that I've created a shortcut to do it, where if I just press a button and then I can press the number keys to automatically click without me having to move the mouse, because moving the mouse takes time and I don't want to do that. So I've created that shortcut to click on them, and I'll show you how I did that in just a little bit. So another plugin that's really useful is called Action Chains, and this one is not as easy to download. So I'll show you how to do that. So we go to, again, I'll paste the link in the chat. So here's the link to it. Again, we would navigate it to by musescore.org, download plugins, action chain to shortcut. And the way we have to install this is we go to the code repository on GitHub. So we click that, and we click actionchains.qml. And now this is the actual code for it. So what we want to do is we click raw. Yeah, we click raw for the raw text. Then you can do Control A to copy it. So Control A, Control C to copy. Then we go back to MuseScore, and you go to Plugins, and then do Plugin Creator, and it will open another box. What you want to do now is create a new plugin. You want to get rid of all of this, so Control A, backspace, and then paste in all of that text. And this is all of the text for action chains. So then we can save this, and so when I was practicing the webinar, I just called it action chains webinar.qml, and so I'll do that again. I'll just overwrite it. So now it's saved. So we can close out of the plugin creator, and we can go to plugins, plugin manager, and we can check mark the action chains webinar, but you don't have to. I just have normal action chains added, so I'm not going to check mark it, but you would. And you would check mark it so it's in the menu and click OK. And now you can run it. It should be right here for you to run. So what this does is it allows you to assign multiple commands to one shortcut. So for example, I select this and I go to plugins, action chains. So I'm going to create a new one. So yours should be blank when you create it, and then you click on the commands, and then you click available commands. And now you have a ton of things that you can do. So maybe you want to add a staccato, add a tenuto, and add a sforzato, which is an accent. So you click all of those, and then you can define a shortcut. So I'm going to do Control-Shift-Alt-T because I know that hasn't been assigned yet. I'm going to close it now. Then when I've selected something, I do Control-Shift-Alt-T, it will add the sforzato, tenuto, and staccato like I wanted it. And you can take this much farther than just doing complicated articulations. I haven't looked into the more complicated uses of it because of what I'm about to show you. But that is not to say that it can't be done with it. And it's a lot easier. It's a lot more intuitive and less overwhelming than what I will show you. So you noticed how I said before that there is no shortcut to add dynamics. And that is true if you don't write your own plugin to add any palette item. So I'll show it right now. So I click on a note, I run the command to apply symbols from palette, and I can do like mezzo forte and add it, and it adds it. Here I could do piano. Sorry, it's so I will explain this. In 3.5.2, there's a bug where the palette can't be searched as well, and also I have a lot of things open with Zoom, so it's running pretty slow right now. So, but normally this does work. So, let's try this again. Yeah, it's not give it there. The computer's using too much RAM to be able to calculate it in the time given. So we can try another one like arpeggio. Yeah, it's not. Let me see if I can remedy this by increasing the time between it. Okay. Let's see if this is any better. So. Yeah. Okay. So I've increased the time by a lot in it so that it will work. But that is to show, especially when I don't have Zoom running, it works flawlessly. all the time. And I also have one for select similar elements. So this is, I can control right click something and will automatically go to, it will automatically right click, scroll down to select, go to all similar elements in range selection and hit that. And I use that a ton because I can just like copy, uh, do that, and then just paste it into what I've want. Um, yeah, so these are examples of macros. And so what a macro is it's just a series of steps for that you define for the computer to execute. So you could probably say that action chains is a plugin that can run macros within MuseScore without having to go through the process of coding it yourself. Um, so let me just talk briefly about when you would want to use a macro. You want to use a macro if you're doing a task that's super, that you're doing it over and over and over again, and it takes up a lot of your time. So, for example, going to dynamics and having to manually click on them takes time, and I want this to be a lot faster, so I can just like type in the dynamic I want and add it. So um, I'm about to show you the code, so it may, I hope it's not too overwhelming. I will not be going in depth into it. I'll just be giving like a brief purview of what it does to just show how I went about creating it. So let me drag the screen over. This is done in a program called AutoHotKey. And AutoHotKey is a scripting language for Windows that has access to the Windows API, so it can detect keyboard presses and mouse moves and anything about like where your mouse is in relation to other things on the window. It's really good at doing that. And so this script actually started as a script on the MuseScore forum called written by the user Mitch Leon, and uh, he came up with the concept of what you do to add a palette item instead of having to um, click on it. What you can do is um, you do the search command, so that's Control F9. You type in what you want. So let's say you want a mezzo piano, and so you type mezzo piano, and there's a lot of things here that are not mezzo pianos. It's not just the dynamic that we want. So tempo has MP in it. These lines have mezzo pianos in them. Jump has an MP in them, so it comes up with this, but we want it as just a dynamic mezzo piano. So what he did was he created a workspace that's the same as the advanced workspace, but all of the palette items, all more than 600 of them, have unique identifiers that he created. So dynamics have, like if I just go to dynamics, every single one of these has a unique identifier. So triple P is D-1 and like S is D-21. So if I search D-21, it's just this S. And then I can use the shortcut that I've made of apply current palette item to the score. So I can do, I've assigned this as Control Alt P. There's no shortcut for it by default. So you do it as Control. It sends the command to add a palette item to score, and then you're good. So what he did was he said, so let's create this box where the user can tell what type of thing we want. And then it sends, this is the palette search. This will send Control F9 for the palette search. It sends Control A to delete all of the things within the palette search. And then there's a ton of ifs. There's an if statement for every single palette item. And so after I took a coding class this past semester, I realized that this is not the most efficient way it can be done. So I decided I would rewrite this and incorporate more functionality into it. So I have this where it starts off the same, where I just create the user input box, and then what I do is adding the palette items is all just this. It's not 600 lines. It's not 600 different if statements. So what it does is what I've created is an ini file. So an ini file is just a key and value pair. So a key is the variable name, and the value is what's stored inside the variable. So in the variable CLT, we've stored C-1-. So that's a treble clef, and that's the code for a treble clef. So what this does is AutoHotKey is very good at searching through these ini files very quickly. And so instead of having to check all of these if statements, it just searches the ini file for this key value pair and sends that to the to MuseScore to add it. Yeah, so that's how the palette thing works. I'll show you. I have this function list of different functions that I use. So here's the insert palette item one that it uses. Prune Stack is right here. So Prune Stack is a function that takes two inputs, the x position and the y position, and this is the x position and the y position of these different checkboxes. So I've gone through and labeled each and figured out what the coordinates of each of those are. So I can, and then what it does is it just moves the mouse. It just moves the mouse to where I tell it to move, and then like I've assigned one that will click the enter, and that works. And lastly, the where is it? Select all similar elements. This is the one that when I do control right click, it will send a right click and then move down and navigate through that menu to select all similar elements in range selection, which I use so often. And I know someone on the MuseScore Reddit was asking for, they have a selection that they want to transpose up a fourth into all 12 keys. So I just wrote a simple function right here that will duplicate it with R and then go through the transpose dialog box to transpose it up a fourth. So I've assigned this to Control-Shift-0. So I'll just show it in action. So for example, I'll delete this and I'll select this, Control-Shift-0. It runs through the plugin, it runs through the function I created, and will move it up a fourth. And it's these type of tasks, if you're copying, pasting it, then you have to go to Tools, Transpose, by interval, perfect fourth, make sure it's on up, hit OK. That takes time. And if you're doing that 12 times, that's what, like 2 or 3 minutes that you're spending just going through dialog boxes instead of just, and what this allows you to do in the like 5 minutes it took me to write, like I'm used to writing this type of code, but even the more you write it, the better you get at it. So in the short amount of time, even if it takes you longer at first to write the code to do the macro, it will, if you're doing this and you're creating worksheets for your theory class and everything is up a fourth and you're doing this every day, that will save you the initial time investment that you made to create the macro will save you so much time in the future. And yeah, that pretty much just wraps up what I had to say about the demonstration. I forgot about the demonstration, so I'll do that very quickly. So it's in scores. Nope. So I've the Passacaglia I showed at the beginning. I've downloaded that, and maybe let's put it into a Flex Ensemble template. So I'll go into just a file explorer. So I'll go into MuseScore. I know my template is in templates. Nope, it's in scores, templates. Sorry, this is taking a while because of Zoom. Educational templates, Flex Ensemble. We copy that. And now I can just go back to scores, paste it, and now I can call this, I can rename it. I can call it like Bach Flex Webinar. So I'll open it. Yeah, so here's the template. So let's insert some more measures into it. So I do that by doing Control Insert, and then I don't know, let's say 50 more measures. There we go. What I was saying about the bar lines is that they don't. Is there a reason for not putting the template folder instead? No, I just didn't think about doing that when I made it. You could put it in the template folder, and I would believe it would show up in the new score wizard. It would show up as like something that you've done, and you could do it that way. There, for things that where I have the like if I've done a musical, and if I'm doing the preparation for a musical, the score layout is incredibly locked in, so I don't need to like go through the new score window. And what it also does is it gives me the option of I don't have to um, I don't have to respecify the title and stuff, because the number and the composers and stuff are already in there because it's the same show. But if you wanted to, yes, for all intents and purposes, you should put it in the template folder instead of the score. But that's just where I put it. So first we have to create. We have to change this into 3/4. So I'll do that here. Take a while to do it, and I'll change it into C minor, so 3 flats. There we go. We want to break this up so there's a pickup measure. So I've copied this and I'm going to paste it into everything. So I'm just going to grab these 3, copy, paste, paste, paste. And the only reason I didn't just do that and then, yeah, what you said, that using select all similar elements for the bar line is the reason that MuseScore. Oh, it doesn't continue adding bar lines when adding the measure. Yeah, that's. I think this will be updated in 3.6, but if you have, it should work when dragging. Okay. Okay. Oh wow, I didn't even know about. Thank you so much. That's actually really great. I didn't realize it. The last time I tried that out must have been in a version where that didn't work. So thank you so much. I did not know about that. Um, uh, yeah. So we fixed this, and now we're just going to create a pickup measure. So I'm going to delete the first 2 of the first 2 beats on every stave by highlighting them and then doing Control Delete. If I only did it for the first stave, visually it would be correct for the first stave, and like the number of notes within the measure would be correct on every stave, but it would only be visually there on the first stave. So and also let's shift the measure numbers over so the pickup measure is measure 0. So what we can do is we go to right click, measure properties, click -1, apply, okay. And now this first full ball is measure 1. So let's copy this. We'll go up to about here. We'll copy that, and now we can paste it we can paste it into the baritone line. And I'll probably want to get rid of this pedale. And this is way too low for and someone playing it. So what I'm first going to do is I'm going to change the view to continuous view so that it's just like a scroll view and you're not interrupted by the page breaks. So I'm going to select the whole thing, Control up to bring it up, and that's good. So let's add a tempo text. So we could do that with Alt Shift T, Option Shift T on a Mac, and let's add maybe maestoso quarter note equals 56. And what you'll notice here is that it applies it in the correct space on every part, which is great. And so we'll just copy this into these parts. And so let's say that I wanted to add a forte here. You could do it manually through the dynamics. I'm just going to do it through my shortcut. So we'll add a fortissimo. There we go. I'm also going to fix these bar lines because now it's bothered me. So we've added forte, and now I believe on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th full measure starts the manual as in hands on the organ. So we'll copy this. And on the 8th full measure, we'll paste it in maybe here. It doesn't really matter for now. So this third line, I'm actually not going to go this far. So I'm just going to stop here because it will take up too much time. So I'm just going to get rid of this part. Sorry. I'm just going to delete that to make our lives easier. So I'll copy this into a tenor line. So I'll put it here. And what I can do for the clefs is I'll select all similar elements and delete them because we want it. That doesn't work. Okay. Okay. Sorry, it's some don't work as well as others. That would be one of them. So now it's in the correct clef. So we want to delete this part because we put it in the right space. And now we can use the explode command on this part. So we can go to Tools, Explode, and so the rests got kind of messed up here. So I'm just going to delete this one because I know it's in voice 2. And this measure is corrupted. So I will fix that by just copying in the correct one, changing it back to an A, and now it's good. And so this is the soprano line. We'll copy this. We'll actually cut this, Control X, into the soprano staves, and we'll copy this, the alto line, into these alto staves. So, and now let's say maybe we wanted all of these to be pianos. So I select all of them, piano, and it adds them all. And that's what's great about them. You can use these tools to your advantage because instead of having to take this and manually separate all of these voices would take forever, but it only took me like, I don't know, 7 minutes to do all of this. So and I'll just show you that the parts are automatically correct. It's great. So that concludes what I was going to say in the webinar. Are there any questions about MuseScore, about the code that I showed you that you want me to go over? Thank you all for being here. It was a pleasure doing this. Um, okay, so Christopher asks, sometimes the page will jump around while doing note input. Is there a shortcut to toggle the view without turning off the note input mode and clicking and dragging? I asked, do you mean like, oh, so like if you're doing, I think I understand what you mean. So if you're like here and you enter a note, and I'll just do like it's jumping around. I don't think there's any way to get rid of that. Um, you can turn it on to continuous view up here instead of page view. So that will help. You can turn off. You can turn off the pan score button. Okay. Next to the metronome. Oh, okay. Yeah. So that would be how you would do it. Thank you again for. So yeah. So now it just keeps going, but it doesn't move with you. So yes, there's a way to do it. Your second question is there a shortcut to find where you're working within the notes? It's a bit hard to see the blue highlighted notes sometimes that you're working on sometime. Not that I've used. Play. Let me look. Again, if anyone else knows how to do this, feel free to tell me. Yeah, so I don't think there is one. So you can just hit escape to make sure that you're out of note entry, and then you can just move to the part of the score that you want. So the way I personally move around is using the mouse. So I go up and down with just the regular mouse wheel. To go left and right is holding shift with the mouse wheel and control, and the mouse wheel will zoom. Yeah, if pan, so CJ says if pan score is on, you can just quickly hit something like up or down to raise or lower the note, and it should jump to the highlighted note. So yeah, that's a way to do it. Yeah, so does that yeah, does that answer your questions? Or does anyone else have any questions? Are there any handy shortcuts for chord changes? Like adding chord symbols, do you mean? So you could, or like adding in the chords themselves. Because there is a shortcut to do the chord symbols themselves. So like if I go here, Control K will do chord symbols. So Control or Command K, so I can just type this as C, and I can hit space to move on. So C sus4, E7, D flat 7. Do you mean like that? Yeah, so Control K will add in the chord symbols. So what you can do is you can also change these within the style. So maybe you want it as use jazz text, and you set this as a style, and now it's the handwritten font. Or you could do Arial narrow, which some people like to use too, and that works as well. Other questions? Same topic. I'm assuming there is no way for the software to tell what chord you just entered. Um, uh, no, not really. There might there's I'm pretty yeah. So what CJ said, I'm pretty sure there's a plugin for it. I haven't used it. But if you went searching through the list of plugins, I'm sure there's one that will create chord symbols from the chords you have entered. I can look for it. Download plugins. Yeah. Any other questions? Chord identifier. Yeah, thank you. I might have tried downloading that. I might have that here. No, I don't. Okay, never mind. If there's any interest, I could go into more specifics about how the code works. If anyone's interested in implementing it themselves, if it might be very boring for some people, depending on your level of interest in code. So any other final questions that you want me to answer? There are 3 chord identifier plugins. Any idea which one to use? If questions pop up in the future, I will put my thank you for saying that. I will put my email in the chat, and you can email me. Or what you can do is you can go to the MuseScore forums, and they're great because if you go to MuseScore support forum, there are different forums that you can ask questions on. So some of you may have seen my post from the general discussion. So if you have a bug report or you just have a question about how to use something, a feature request, just generally want to talk about MuseScore, there's different forums for you to use, or you could email me, whatever you want. As for which identifier, so you'll I think it will have to depend on what type of music you're writing. So probably that one, the chord identifier pop and jazz. Yeah, I would probably use this one. Download them and try it out for yourself and see which one works best for you. Yeah, I'm happy to help. I don't know if I probably won't do one of just me talking at at Zoom the entire time, but I plan on doing more of them on webinars on specific just areas where people can present the way they do something or things that they use to make MuseScore more efficient. So yeah, I plan on continuing to doing this. I will email you if I have your email, and I'll send you the recording, and I'll email you if there's a new one coming up that I'm writing. So yeah, thank you all for coming. If there are no more questions, I will end it now. So again, many thanks. I'll stop the recording and end it.